your unique item number for her case number?
Fingernail clippings from the right hand, item 18A, or is the swabbings was item 42. The swabbings from the left-hand fingernails were item 18B. The swabbings were item 43.
Okay. So did you look at both the left hand and the right hand?
Yes.
Tell us your process and tell us your results, starting first with her right hand.
The right hand, the extraction, amplification, quantitation, amplification steps I previously detailed were used. And sorry. Amplification was performed with the traditional DNA method, and because of the complexity of the mixture, I could not make any conclusions. We went ahead and did YSTR testing as well on the fingernail clippings.
And did you do YSTR testing before you did true allele?
They're kind of at the same time.
Okay. So why don't we talk about YSTR first on the right hand, and then we'll move to the true allele for the right hand, and then we'll repeat the questions for the left.
For the right hand, there was the YSTR haplotype was one individual, one male individual, Jose Antonio Ibarra, and Argenis Ibarra cannot be excluded from the YSTR haplotype from the right-hand swabbings and the left-hand swabbings. Under the assumption no mutation has occurred, paternal male relatives also cannot be excluded.
Okay. So paternal brothers share the same YSTR haplotype, is that the word?
They should, unless there's a mutation.
Okay. And did you actually see a mutation in this particular case?
Yes, there was a mutation in Diego Ibarra's YSTR profile.
And so because of that genetic mutation, were you able to exclude Diego Ibarra as the donor of the male profile underneath Laken Riley's right hand?
Yes.
Okay. And so you could not, under YSTR, exclude Argenis Ibarra, you told us?
Correct.
And you could not exclude Jose Antonio Ibarra?
Correct.
Did the right fingernails go on to true allele?
Yes, I did.
And what were your results in true allele?
Can I state the probability for the YSTR?
You may, yes, sorry.
The YSTR profile has been observed in 29,207 total individuals in the national database, so it is expected to occur approximately in 1 in 9,750 male individuals.
All right. And moving on to true allele.
For true allele, the wet-dry swabbings from the fingernail clippings from the right hand, 18A, item 42, was a mixture of at least 2 individuals. We assumed that the profile of Laken Riley was present when we did the calculations, so there will be no match statistic for her because it's an intimate sample. The DNA match between the wet-dry swabbings from the fingernail clippings from the right hand and the match was to Jose Antonio Ibarra. The match is 10 billion times more probable than a coincidental match to an unrelated person in the population.
Was Diego Ibarra able to be excluded by true allele?
Diego Ibarra's match was approximately 1 billion times less probable than a coincidental match to an unrelated person in the population, with a 5.36% chance of a false exclusion.
Does that mean he was excluded?
Yes.
What about Argenis Ibarra?
Argenis Ibarra, his match was 200 trillion times less probable than a coincidental match to an unrelated person in the population. Again, the 5.36% chance of a false exclusion.
And does that mean Jose Ibarra was excluded?
Yes.
So then moving on to the left hand, and does that complete the results from the right hand?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So that would be, in the right hand, the true allele results would be Laken Riley and Jose Ibarra.
Correct.
Left hand.
Left hand contained a mixture of DNA from at least 2 individuals. Again, the reference of Laken Riley was assumed in the calculations.
And why are you permitted to do that?
Because the DNA is collected directly from her person, so we would expect her DNA to be there so we can make an assumption.
All right, thank you.
Due to limited data, we cannot make any conclusions about the foreign evidence genotype from the swabbings from the left hand. So again, that fell under the 4%.
Moving on then, did that complete both, that completed the fingernails, right and left?
Yes.
The straw, did you test a straw for the presence of DNA?
Yes, I did.
And what was that number from your crime lab, the straw?
The straw was 64B, and the swabbings from the straw was item 66.
What did you do to the straw, and what were your results, or the swabbings from the straw?
The serologist prepared swabbings from the swab that was used to test for her screening, and I used those same swabbings to obtain a DNA profile.
And a serologist in this case, would that be Katrina Osipovich?
Yes.
And so what did you do once you, what were your results of the straw then?
The results from the straw was, for the traditional DNA testing, I could not make any conclusions because it was about a 50-50 mixture, so I could not separate the profile into individual contributors.
So then what did you do?
I did true allele.
And what were your results?
The swabbings of the straw contained a mixture of DNA from at least 2 individuals. There was a match from the swabbings of the straw to Jose Ibarra. This is approximately 50 quadrillion times more probable than a coincidental match to an unrelated person in the population.
And what about the other DNA profiles there in the straw?
The other profiles, Jose Ibarra was excluded from the data from the swabbings, 10 sextillion times less probable than a coincidental match. Diego Ibarra was also excluded, 10 quadrillion times less probable than a coincidental match.
And what about Laken Riley?
She was also excluded, 200 nonillion times less probable than a coincidental match to an unrelated person.
And were you able to, other than identifying a match to the likelihood ratio of Jose Ibarra to approximately 50 quadrillion times more probable than a coincidental match to an unrelated person in the population, were you able to draw any other conclusions about the profile in the straw?
The profile from the straw, I know it shouldn't be a paternally related male individual because the kit we use contains one YSTR location that we test for, and this one YSTR location was different from both of the brothers and from Jose Ibarra.
Okay.
And it was a male individual.
All right. Did you test a swabbings from an Adidas black hat?
Yes.
What is the hat number for your laboratory, and what did you do?
For the hat, the number is item 39 is the black ball cap, and the swabbings are item item 56.
What did you do to the swabbings, and what were your results?
The traditional DNA testing was performed first, and because of the complexity of the mixture, I could not make any conclusions.
And then what happened to the data from that testing?
The Trilil was used on the swabbings from the hat. The black ball cap contained the profile of at least 3 individuals. There was a match from the data from the swabbings from the black ball cap and Laken Riley. This match is approximately 1 octillion times more probable than a coincidental match to an unrelated person in the population. Due to the complexity of the mixture, no conclusive determination could be made as to the minor contributor.
So you can't tell us who the minor contributors are on the hat?
Correct.
But Laken Riley was present on the hat for true allele?
Yes.
Did you test rocks, which would be your items 22 and 23 at the crime lab?
Yes, rocks were tested.
Tell us about that.
There was swabbing from a rock, item 22, and contact swabbings from a rock, item 22, swabbings 58 and 59. And there was also another rock, item 23. Those swabbings were item 60, and those contained the DNA profile of 1 individual, and that profile matched the reference of Laken Riley. The frequency of the profile is approximately 1 in 500 octillion individuals in the population.
Okay. What about the other rocks? So only Laken Riley on that item?
Yes. Only Laken Riley in the rock swabs.
Both rocks?
Both rocks.
All right. What about a tree? Did you test swabbings from a tree?
Yes.
And what were your results?
The tree, the cutting from the tree, was the profile of 1 individual. That again matched the profile of Laken Riley. Approximately 1 in 500 octillion individuals.
And only Laken Riley on the tree?
Correct.
I want to go back to the fingernails. And you told us on the right fingernails, it was for true allele results, Laken Riley and Jose Ibarra, correct?
Yes.
And are there any other persons present there?
No.
How is it that a person, or under what situations would you expect to find a person's DNA underneath another person's fingernails?
Usually it either has to have some sort of scratching or contact with the inside of the nail. These were shorter nails, so it wasn't like they were long nails that you can just accidentally have contact with. Also, you could have someone's DNA from bodily fluids present in the fingernails.
You talk to him at some point. At some point, do you decide to obtain a search warrant for the apartment and to freeze the apartment?
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about that process.
Well, based on the fact that he was wearing that hat, the time frame that Tim Johnson encountered him was within 24 hours of the murder. He was walking back towards the general direction of campus, which was concerning as well. He somewhat matched the description of the male seen in that photo, discarding of what I later learned was evidence found in that dumpster.
And specific what evidence?
A sweater or a pullover of some sort with blood on it.
Okay.
And hair.
Okay. And did you ever see that evidence, or you were just informed of it?
No, it was picked up throughout the middle of the night. I was there all day the day before. They sent me home to get a sleep cycle, and
Okay.
I was the supervisor this day.
All right.
So I never saw the evidence throughout the night.
All right, go ahead.
And
What
then
about the proximity from the dumpster to Laken Riley's body?
the dumpster to Laken Riley's body, probably rough estimate 500 yards.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So at some point, when you're with Diego Ibarra and you decide to get the search warrant, first of all, how do you communicate that to get the search warrant?
I go and talk to my superiors and I ask them, because they're maybe 20, 30 yards away in the parking lot at another vehicle discussing. I think they were talking to some GBI agents and other agency partners. And I asked for clarification of, at this point I gained knowledge there were other individuals inside the apartment. I wanted to start getting resources in and confirming that yes, we are going to go ahead and surround it. A warrant's going to be sought, and I need other translators here because from what I'm gathering, no one else speaks English inside the apartment.
And how many other individuals did you believe to be inside the apartment?
At this time, 3.
And could you see them from where you're standing?
No, not without being intrusive of sticking my face up to that window, which we didn't do. One, for an officer safety standpoint, but also, I didn't have a warrant at that point yet.
Do you see the window? You said the window. Can you point the window out?
Yes.
And that's again 1342. Is that the window to D126?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. I'm going to roll a little more. At some point, do you start asking Diego questions about whether he has any injuries?
Eventually, yes, I did.
And do you take pictures of him, and do you see parts of his body?
Correct. Yes, I did.
Going to play the video first, and then show you some photos. First of all, did you? You mentioned to us that there was a fake ID, so you knew he had given a fake ID. Tell us a little bit of that process.
I didn't obtain it myself. It was provided to Sergeant Johnson when he located him and was identifying him. Sergeant Johnson provided it to me and stated, if you look at it, there's 2 different dates of birth listed. There was one vertically on the side and then one listed with the rest of his identification information.
So did you agree with Sergeant Johnson's assessment that this was not a valid form of government identification?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to go to, I'm still muted. About 1358 on States Exhibit 177. What are we looking at here now at 1358?
I believe at this point my captain, Seth Robinson, was interested in seeing his hands.
And does he show you his hands?
Yes. So Captain Robinson, I believe, asked Officer Bridges to relay to him to please, show us your hands, and he complied.
Okay.
But put his hands out.
And did you see his hands?
I did.
Did you see any injuries to his hands?
No.
At 1359, what are we seeing Diego Ibarra do?
He was asked about, I believe they were asking if he could take his jacket off, and they were looking at tattoos as well as trying to make observations of any other potential injuries.
Go ahead.
And he takes his jacket off and becomes, I don't know exactly what he says, he starts kind of ranting a little bit and pulls his shirt up and shows us his stomach and his side tattoo.
And do you see any injuries on his stomach?
From my vantage point, no, I did not.
And if you had seen any injuries, would you have documented them?
Yes.
Okay. So may we toggle over, Your Honor? States 178, what are we looking at there?
That is a picture of Diego.
And do we see the hat he's wearing in this image?
Yes.
Is that the black Adidas hat that you've already described?
Yes, ma'am.
States 179. Well, who is that?
That's Diego.
Okay, and on his face, does he have any tattoos?
He does. He has a teardrop tattoo on his right eye, kind of off to the side there. It's a little hard to see if you zoomed in, but we identified as potential gang affiliation tattoo.
Can you point to that on
Yes.
the right side for 179? Okay. So what that image is, or that mark on his face that states 179, was that an injury?
No, it's a tattoo.
All right, thank you. States 180,
Again, it's Diego.
and do you see a tattoo on his neck?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, please point to that. 182,
Diego again.
okay, does he have tattoos on the back of his neck?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you please point to those? 183,
It's a close-up of the picture we just looked at.
and in 183, can you actually see the rest of the hat?
You can, yeah.
Okay. 184,
Rib cage tattoo. I'm not sure what the design was.
so tattoos, but did you observe any injuries?
No.
At some point while you are there, Sergeant, and approximately how long are you at this apartment complex that day?
All day, from 8:32 in the morning, and I don't think I was released till probably 8 or 9 o'clock at night.
All right, I'm going to go back to a different section of your video. And again, we are going to, it's played on mute. We are now at 14:34 in the top count for the record. So that would be 9:38 a.m. Am I right about that?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. At 9:38 a.m., we see an individual in a yellow shirt. Can you please point to that person first of all? And who is that person?
That is a brother Argenis, either Argenis or Argenis Ibarra.
And how did this person appear in this video? What happened?
He, while speaking with Diego and waiting for resources and other things, he walked out with a trash bag, like a 5-gallon plastic white trash bag that you would buy at Kroger.
Was he detained as well?
Yes,
And did you photograph him that day?
we did.
And I don't need to toggle over, but states 185, who is that?
That's Argenis.
At some point, did you obtain consent to enter the apartment from Argenis?
Yes,
And did you in fact enter the apartment?
I did.
What was your purpose of entering the apartment?
Well, he informed us that something was on the stove and that he was very adamant about going in to turn the stove off, I believe because of a fire hazard. So that was what we asked for consent to do.
And prior to going in, did you look to see if there are residents inside?
I did what we call a threshold evaluation, so I kind of peeked around from an angle because the door was already open. When Argenis left, he left the door open. So I could kind of see what the environment inside looked like. And when I didn't see any obvious threats, that's when I got closer to the doorway.
In states 177, we're now playing the second video for the record, and we're at 1442. Could you show the court where the open door is
Yes.
in the frame? All right. I'm going to fast forward a little bit to the time where you made entry. And at this point, I am going to play, so 14, we're at 14:55 for the record, and I am going to play this video with volume because there's no statements of individuals, but the officers, and there is no confrontation issue here. But now our video is not working. Our audio is not working. There we go.
And that's back by the bedroom. I don't know if that's an exigency for me to go in there for a suit. Just a normal dude. I gotta go into the other. That's true. Yeah, so I'll do it. There's a guy right here. There's a guy right here. Yeah, but... Alright. Hola. 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 Policia. Mano, hey. Policia, manos.
He said he left something on the stove, so I was going to try and cut it off, but
Hey, I need you to translate one at a time. Come here. Come to me. Come here.
pues sí, para acá.
For you. Tell him I need to see his hands. I need to see his hands.
Ponte tu mano para arriba.
Tell him to slowly get out. Ask him to get anybody else.
Despacito, parte de la cama.
That's a match, man.
Ahí.
See slowly.
También acá, despacito. Para acá. ¿Tienes algo en tus bolsas? ¿Hay alguien más aquí dentro?
No. For me.
Vente para acá. Ahorita ella no para acá.
There's nobody else in here?
¿Hay alguien más ahí dentro? No. He said no.
Turn this bitch off.
Okay, I'm going to pause it at 14:58 for the record. Were there people inside the apartment?
Yes.
How many?
2.
What were they doing?
Laying in bed.
Could you see their hands or their bodies?
No.
You had Bridges translate for you at some point, and when you went in, we could see a light. Were you holding a flashlight in your hand?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Were there, in fact, beans on the stove?
There were in
Okay.
a crock pot, the ceramic part of a crock pot.
All right. And you turned those off?
I tried.
The individual, first of all, the 2 individuals was one male and one was female.
Correct.
Okay. The female, what was her name?
Her name was Rosabelli, and I can't remember her last name at the moment.
The other male that was in the apartment, what is his name?
Jose Ibarra.
And do you see that person that you pulled out of the apartment at 14:58 in this screen?
Yes, you do.
And what color clothing is he wearing?
Red shirt, black shorts, and like black and red sandals.
And the person that you pulled out of the apartment on the 23rd day of February 2024, do you see him in the courtroom today?
I do.
Please point to him and describe an article of clothing that he's wearing for the record.
He's wearing a striped button-down shirt.
May the record reflect the witnesses identified the defendant. Did you, at some point, have the opportunity to observe Jose Ibarra, the defendant, on scene?
Yes.
How close were you at times to Jose Ibarra?
Your normal conversation distance, maybe a foot, foot and a half.
Did you observe any injuries to Jose Ibarra?
I did.
What injuries did you observe?
While speaking to him, I noticed on his right arm, his bicep, there was a scratch, which I identified as a potential defensive wound. On his left arm, he had a forearm scratch that was very similar, which in my mind looked like fingernail scratches to me. While he was sitting there speaking to us, I also noticed on his left wrist, just below the palm, he had a puncture, maybe a half an inch wide, that through my experiences of playing sports in high school and receiving the same injury from fingernails in football, I could see like wet flesh, like almost like it was fresh. It wasn't very old, possibly still irritated. And as he moved his wrists, when I was looking at them closely, I could actually see the liquid, or I guess body fluids that would be in that cut, kind of reflecting with light.
Did you observe, I'm going to publish a few of the photos. Court, would you please toggle over it, Your Honor? States 186. Who is that?
That's Jose Ibarra.
And how would you describe his beard and mustache situation?
It's thicker than Diego's, if I remember correctly. Not well maintained. He had sort of a neck beard. Wasn't very long, but it was definitely an established beard. I wouldn't consider it like a 5 o'clock shadow.
Did Jose Ibarra have any tattoos on his neck?
No.
As far as height and weight differentials, you were with both Jose Ibarra and Diego Ibarra?
Correct.
How would you describe their height and weight differential?
Jose at the time weighed more through my observations and was shorter.
And when you say at the time, does he look thinner in court today?
He does.
Is that the way he looked on February 23rd as far as weight? And when I say he, I mean Jose.
No.
States 188, what's that?
That is the back of Jose's head.
187?
That is a close-up picture of Jose's mouth and lips. We were concerned. It looked like his lips were red and irritated.
189?
A side profile picture. That's the right arm with a scratch.
191?
That would be the left lower wrist, forearm area with a scratch, as well as the palm.
192?
That is his left palm that had some bruising on the thumb palm area, and if you kind of look below that area, you'll see an irritated red area, which is where I saw that fingernail puncture mark.
Okay, the one that was pussing or oozing, you said?
Yeah, it was.
Could you please point to that in 192? At the middle of the screen, thank you.
Right.
193?
That's another picture of his right arm with a tattoo, but also you can see the fingernail scratch.
And 194?
That is a scratch on his forearm.
I want to talk to you about the evidence that you collected at your autopsy. Were Laken Riley's fingernails clipped at autopsy?
Yes, they were.
And I put some gloves in front of you if you need them,
Okay.
Dr. DeMarco. Show you the over in case. So states 319, I'm going to hand you states 319, and we're not going to open it, but
Okay.
we're going to open some other stuff, so you should if you want to. States 319, do you recognize it? Do you recognize your unique case number? Is your name on it?
Yes, it has my name as well as the unique case number, the county, and the name of Laken Riley.
And are those the fingernail clippings that you took at autopsy of Laken Riley?
Yes, these are the ones taken at autopsy.
The state would move to admit 319.
No objection.
319 submitted.
Did you perform a sexual assault kit on Laken Riley?
Yes.
Tell me what you did. What is that, and how did you do it in this case?
A sexual assault kit consists of collecting evidence samples. So we took swabs of the vagina as well as the anus. And then we also collected scalp hair.
And at your autopsy and in your examination of Laken Riley, did you observe any signs of a completed sexual assault?
I did not observe anything that would make me believe there was a sexual assault. She had no anogenital trauma. In addition, I forgot to mention the sexual assault kit also includes a swab of the oral cavity.
So State's Exhibit 324, do you recognize that?
Yes.
What is it?
This is the envelope containing the sexual assault kit.
And again, do you see your unique case number, your name, and Laken Riley's name on that?
Yes.
State would move to admit State's 324.
No objection.
324 submitted.
Did you, at autopsy, or was there at autopsy a sample of Laken Riley's DNA obtained during that procedure, during that process?
Yes, we obtained 2 bloodstain cards.
Did you also, at autopsy, have samples of Laken Riley's hair collected?
Yes.
How, and what's that process like?
Some of the scalp hair will be removed from the scalp, and when it's removed, you make sure that there's, the root comes along with it. So a collection of scalp hair from different areas of the scalp is collected.
Was her clothing also collected?
Yes.
And the vegetation that you observed in her hair when she arrived at your facility, was that also collected?
Yes.
I'm going to come up near you with a few items. First, States 323, do you recognize it?
Yes.
What is it?
This is a sample of the vegetative debris, so leaves and twigs taken from her hair.
And again, do you see your unique case number and your name and the Laken Riley's name?
Yes.
State would move to admit States 323.
No objection.
323 submitted.
Did Laken Riley have a hair tie with her hair or some hair in her hair?
Yes.
And was that collected as well?
Yes.
States Exhibit 326, can you tell us what that is?
This is a evidence bag containing the black hair tie.
And the state would move to admit States 326.
No objection.
326 is submitted.
And I want to move to her clothing. Let's start first with her shoes. States 322. Do you recognize 322?
Yes.
What is it?
This is an evidence bag containing her athletic shoes.
State would move States 322. Move to admit States 322.
No objection.
322 submitted.
States 320. What is that?
This is an evidence bag containing her pants.
State would move to admit States 320.
No objection.
320 submitted.
States 321. What is that?
This is an evidence bag containing her underwear.
State would move to admit States 321.
No objection.
321 submitted.
States 325.
This is an evidence bag containing her socks.
State would move to admit States 325.
No objection.
325 submitted.
States Page 327.
This is an evidence bag containing a piece of black fabric that appeared to be a bra strap.
And the state would move to admit states 327.
No objection.
327 is admitted.
Dr. DeMarco, did you form an opinion as to the cause of death of Laken Riley?
I did.
What is that opinion?
Her cause of death is the combined effects of blunt force head trauma and asphyxia.
What is her manner of death?
Homicide.
May I have 1 moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
I will pass the witness. If I just have a moment to put my photos away.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Is hemorrhaging considered a subset of a cause of death, or can it be its own cause of death? Blood loss. Is blood loss considered a subset of other causes of death, or can it be its own cause of death?
So, blood loss or exsanguination is not usually a word that we'll use for a cause of death. It's more so a mechanism of death. The cause would be the blunt force trauma that caused the hemorrhaging, if that makes sense.
And that was my next question. So in this case, the blunt force trauma, it's not just the trauma, it would be possibly also the bleeding that came from that.
I think they're pretty intrinsically linked, but yes.
When I look at your report, and I just want to make sure we're looking at the same document. Do you have a 6-page report in front of you?
Yes.
And the top says official report, and then it has the GBI sigil on it.
Yes.
When I look at your report, it has a section called case individuals. Did you fill that out?
I did not.
That is automatically populated with this case number?
Yeah, it's just, excuse me, it is automatically populated by our LIMS system, which is Laboratory Information Management System.
Do you know who decides how to categorize these 4 individuals?
I do not.
And just for the record, is it true that it lists the victim as Laken Riley,
Correct.
the subject as Jose Antonio Ibarra,
Correct.
elimination Argenis Ibarra,
Yes.
elimination Diego Jose Ibarra?
Yes.
Did you measure Laken Riley's fingernails before they were clipped?
I did not measure them, but I examined them.
How would you describe the state of her fingernails before they were clipped?
They were intact. They were not broken.
Is it true that there was blood on the inside of the fingernails?
I would have to refer to the photograph to see, but I know that there was soiling of the fingers, specifically blood. I would have to look at the photographs.
In other words, you can remember that there were blood on the fingers, you just can't remember if they were underneath the fingernails?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And is that a yes?
Yes, sorry.
No, you're good. The scratches on her torso, you'd agree with me that they're in a variety of lengths?
Yes.
There's also a little bit of variety of the width of these scratches.
A small amount, yes.
And you were discussing with the state the possibility that they were brush abrasions. Can you explain what you mean by brush abrasions?
So when we say brush abrasions, we're just giving a characterization to their appearance. So they have an appearance where there was some sort of movement across the surface.
So for example, someone could get brush abrasions by dragging somebody across the surface.
That's possible.
And you can't eliminate the possibility that some of these scratches are brush abrasions.
I can't entirely exclude it, but I don't favor that they are.
Do you have an opinion as to whether these scratches could have been caused post-mortem?
I do not think that they were post-mortem.
And why not?
These scratches showed something that we call a vital reaction. So when you see red discoloration in the area of the injury, that is an indication of bleeding, and you will not see bleeding into the tissues in a postmortem injury.
Does that differ depending on how close in time to the death that happens?
No.
So if somebody is deceased and then the next second there's a cut, wouldn't that also have bleeding associated with it because of the blood left in the body?
So the bleeding that goes into the tissues is a effect of the heart pumping. So the heart needs to be pumping to have the pressure to push that blood into the tissues at the injury site.
And so you're saying you didn't notice, I'm not trying to put words around, I'm just trying to repeat, you didn't notice signs of blood being pumped through those wounds, or you did notice signs of blood being pumped through those wounds on the scratches?
Yes.
Okay. Just one moment.
First name is Daniel. Last name Saunders.
Where do you work?
The University of Georgia Police Department.
How long have you worked there?
I worked there since 2008.
What are your duties and responsibilities there?
My current duties are I'm assigned as the lieutenant of the administration division.
At one point, were you over the crime scene section?
Yes, I was a sergeant in investigations, and one of my duties was to process crime scenes.
Tell the court a little bit about your training for processing of crime scenes.
Throughout my time at the University of Georgia Police Department, I've taken classes in crime scene investigations, evidence room management, crime scene tech, basic photography, latent print development, and sexual assault investigations.
And how long have you been a law enforcement officer?
Since 2008.
How many crime scenes have you had the opportunity to process over your career?
I don't have an exact number, but several.
Okay. Were you working on February 22nd of 2024?
Yes.
What were you doing that day?
I was working in investigations that day.
And what, if anything, occurred that day that brings you to court today?
On the 22nd, we had a call go out for a non-accidental death at the intramural fields. I responded to that area to help process the scene.
Were you the lead assigned to process the scene, or did you all call another agency to assist you?
I initially headed that way, and we hadn't called another agency at that time. While I was taking pictures of the scene, I was informed that the GBI was called to come in and process the scene, so I stood by at that point.
When you entered the scene that day, how did you enter the scene?
I went in after crime scene specialist Stewart came in. I kind of followed her as she was taking pictures of the overall area.
At some point, did you observe a item that was not actually within the crime scene, but kind of close to it?
Yes. On the way to where the actual scene itself was, I do remember seeing a white styrofoam cup that was right off the main road leading toward where the scene was. Stood out because it's typically a very clean area right there at the University of Georgia at the intramural fields. So I made a mental note of that at that point.
And did you eventually photograph that cup and collect it?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what has been marked as State's Exhibits 116 through 120. I'll ask that you look at those for me. Do you recognize those photographs?
Yes.
What are they?
These are photos that I took of the cup where it stood when I first saw it.
And do they fairly and accurately depict the cup as you saw it on February 22nd of 2024?
Yes.
State would move to admit 116 to 120.
No objection.
They're admitted.
About what time did you arrive on scene, and about what time did you observe that cup?
My arrival on scene was right around 12:57 is when we arrived at the intramural fields.
And when did you observe that cup?
Immediately upon arrival.
Your Honor, could you toggle back over to the Elmo? Thank you. With the court's permission, may I publish 116?
Yes.
Through 120. 116, tell us what we're looking at here.
This is the main route into the intramural field area. There's a large rock on the left. The road that continues past the rock, past that and to the left is where the actual crime scene was.
Okay, so where my pin is, you see that truck?
Yes.
Is that in the direction of where the crime scene was?
Yes.
Okay. And to get from where this rock is to where the crime scene is, how do you get there?
The primary route, if you're on a vehicle, it's going to be going directly past that cup toward where the vehicle is, and then the road curves off to the left.
State's Exhibit 117, what does that depict?
I'd say closer up the image of the rock in the cup.
118, what does that depict?
It's the same thing. It's just moving in a little bit closer to where the cup and the rock are.
And you showed us where the cup is using the pointer in 118? Up, you gotta go up behind you. You can't.
Oh,
on the
sorry.
screen.
Right.
It's in the middle of 118?
Yeah.
119.
Right here.
In the middle, okay. You can have a seat again. And then State's Exhibit 120. What direction is that?
This is going to be facing toward the east, back toward the family housing area.
And do you see the cup in State's 120?
No, not in this image.
Is
Yes,
it-
I do. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
It's
is it hard to
kinda
see
grainy.
because of the glare?
Yeah.
All right.
It's right here.
All right, so you pointed out in the right side of the photograph. In this photograph, where is the university housing that you mentioned?
University housing is right here on the hill behind the trees.
Okay, thank you. So, did you collect this cup?
Yes.
And when you went to collect the cup, did it have anything in it or was it empty?
It had a liquid inside of the cup.
And did you smell the liquid?
Yes.
And what, if anything, did you smell?
It smelled like alcohol.
Do you have gloves?
Yes.
You can put those on, please. I'm going to hand you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 148. And ask that you look inside of that, and I'll ask you questions.
Yeah.
Do you recognize State's 148?
Yes.
What is it?
This is the cup that I collected that was featured in that photograph.
And did the cup that you collect also have a straw with it?
Yes.
And is this cup in the same or substantially same condition as it was when you collected it?
Yes.
And do you see the straw and the top to the cup as well in there?
Yes.
State would move to admit State's 148, request permission to publish.
No objection.
148 submitted, and you may. Okay.
Prior to collecting the cup, what did you do with the liquid?
I poured it in a separate container and sealed that separate from the cup.
State's Exhibit, I'm going to approach you with what is marked State's Exhibit 154. Do you recognize State's 154?
Yes.
What is it?
That is a map of the intramural field where the cup was and also where the crime scene was.
And would using State's 154 aid you in your testimony before the court today to show him the relationship between the cup and the crime scene?
Yes.
And is this an accurate overhead image of the crime scene from that day? I mean, as it was depicted that day?
Yes.
Statement moved to admit 154, request permission to publish.
I have
submitted for that purpose.
Gonna print out the. Lieutenant, if you could use your pointer again and show us here what we're looking at. Can the court and counsel see, please?
Okay. This is the location of where that cub was, right here next to the rock. And this road is the main road that I took to the crime scene, which then loops around and comes back through here, and this is where the scene itself was.
And in States 154, do you also see Building S?
Yes, right here.
And is it marked Building S?
Yes.
And then also, did you respond to a call later that evening to an apartment complex named Argo, sometimes called Raintree, but it's at 2084 Millage Avenue?
I did, yes.
And do you see that also in States Exhibit 154?
Yes, right. Right here.
At the bottom?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, you can have a seat. In addition to collecting that cup, did you assist Special Agent Stewart in processing the scene?
Yes.
Tell us how you assisted her.
I assisted her by collecting the actual items that were on the scene, by helping her physically put them in the bags, the collection bags. Also, when I collected the cup, and when we found the victim's cell phone, I collected, or Agent Stewart collected that, and then I processed it.
Also, the items that were collected by yourself and Special Agent Stewart that day, were they sealed by you?
Yes.
And were they dropped off at the Georgia Bureau of Investigation Crime Lab for processing sealed?
Yes.
Did you collect the Garmin watch off of Laken Riley's body?
I did.
And did you also bag her hands on the scene?
I did.
How did you bag her hands on scene?
Using CSS Stewart provided me with the handbags that she had, and I placed those on the victim's hands.
I'm going to hand you two items. The first one is State's Exhibit 146. And the next one is State's Exhibit 153. I'm going to ask you about 146 first. Do you recognize 146?
Yes.
What is it?
This is the bag that I placed the victim's watch in after I removed it from her wrist.
And if you open up another side,
Yep.
you see inside the bag?
Yes.
And what's inside the bag?
The Garmin 4Runner watch.
And is it in the same or substantially same condition as it was when you collected it?
Yes.
And when you arrived on scene, was the watch still running?
Yes.
State would move to admit State's Exhibit 146.
No objection.
146 submitted.
May I publish?
Yes.
And there's 153. I'm going to ask you about 153. But before I do that, tell us about when the phone was found. How did you physically process the phone?
Using a sterile brush and sterile black powder that Agent Stewart had in her crime scene vehicle.
Okay, and did y'all do that together as well?
She photographed the item prior to me processing it. After she was done photographing it, I physically processed the phone itself.
Okay. And were you able to lift a latent lift off of that phone?
Yes.
If you could look at States 153, what is that?
This is the latent lift from that phone.
The state would move to admit States 153.
No objection.
153 is admitted.
And I want to ask you, did you note on the lift card where on the phone you found that impression? Or developed that impression? Or saw that impression?
Yes, there's a drawing on the front of the print card itself on where that print came from.
All right, is that the mark that you have there? Is that an X?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And I'll publish that to the court. So it's this drawing here where it says sketch and an X.
Correct.
That's where you saw the impression.
Correct.
And this Laken lift card and Special Agent Stewart's photographs of the Laken lift that you all saw on Laken Riley's phone on the 22nd day of February 2024. What did you do with those items? What happened to the photographs and the Laken lift card itself?
Those were provided to Tim Stewart with Athens Clarke County Police Department.
And what was the purpose of providing those items to him?
He is the local APHIS fingerprint examiner, so those were provided for him for comparison purposes and to run on APHIS.
I want to direct your attention to later on that evening. About what time did you leave the crime scene?
We left, the crime scene work was actually complete around 8:45. We left closer to 9 o'clock.
When you left, where did you go?
We were headed back to the station. On the way there, I received notification that Officer Davis with the Athens Clarke County Police Department had found some items, a jacket that may have been related to our crime scene.
So did you respond to that location?
Yes.
When you were there, what, if anything, did you collect or see?
While we were on the scene, I collected, I handed an evidence bag to Officer Davis with Athens Clarke County Police Department. He put a blue jacket inside of that bag, and we also collected a set of gloves that were found in a bush nearby where the dumpster was.
I am going to hand you what has been marked for identification purposes as States Exhibits 121 and 130 through 130, not and, but through 121 through 130. Ask that you look at those photographs. Do you recognize those photographs?
Yes.
What are they?
These are pictures of what I took that evening of the dumpster that the jacket was found in, the jacket itself that was in the dumpster, and then the gloves that were found in the bush, the relation of the bush to where the dumpster is.
And do they fairly and accurately depict those items as you saw them on that evening?
Yes.
The state would move to admit 121 through 130.
No objection.
121 through 130.
And request permission to publish.
No.
$121, what are we looking at there?
The dumpster that the jacket was found in is right here.
Okay, can we dim the lights again? Because now the glare is back. Thank you.
This dumpster right here is where the jacket was found in.
And that's the one closest to the patrol car?
Correct.
And whose patrol car is that? I mean, as far as what agency?
Athens Clarke County Police Department.
All right, thank you. 122, what are we looking at there?
It's another image of the dumpster just from another angle.
123,
A closer up image of the dumpster itself.
124,
This is an overhead view inside the dumpster. You can see the edge of the dumpster where I held the camera up and photographed the jacket that was found inside.
125.
And it's a closer up image of the jacket itself, just with a little bit better lighting.
All right, and do you see a button on that jacket?
Yes.
Can you point that out? And on your photograph, do you see anything around the button?
Yes, there was hair around this button.
126.
It's the jacket itself again.
And so you said there were some bushes,
Correct.
and you went and looked there and recovered some gloves. What brought you to do that? How did you know to go look in some bushes?
As we were searching the area around where the jacket was found, we had noticed that there was a security camera in one of the apartments nearby. We spoke with a resident of that apartment, and he allowed us to view his camera footage from that security camera that was pointed at the dumpster. After watching that security footage, we noticed that somebody had put an item in that dumpster, and then after they put the item in the dumpster, they walked toward the bush and appeared to put something in the bush as well. So we checked that specific area of the bush where you could see somebody put something in there.
And what, if anything, did you see in the bush when you checked it?
Some gloves that were wrapped up together.
What kind of gloves?
They were black gloves.
Cloth or not cloth?
No, not cloth.
States 130, what does that depict?
That is a picture of the bush in relation to where the dumpster itself was.
Can you tell us which bush you went into? Because I see 2 in States 130.
Yes, I believe it was this one, but one of the other pictures should show it from a different angle as well.
Okay. States 127.
Yeah, it was this bush right here.
And when you say this one, is that the one in the middle? Or
Correct. The one in the middle. It was found right here in these branches.
States 129.
That's how the gloves were situated. We hadn't touched them or anything at this point. This is how they were found in the bush.
And 128.
That's a little bit closer up or further off image of where the gloves were found in the bush.
And how many gloves were there?
I did not unravel the gloves on scene.
Okay, so what did you do with them?
They were turned into the GBI crime lab afterwards.
And did you package them before you did that?
Yes.
How did you package them?
I packaged them in a paper bag.
And same question with the jacket. When the jacket was collected, did you package it?
Yes.
And did you seal it?
Yes.
Did you seal the gloves also?
I did.
And were those items delivered to the crime lab sealed?
Yes.
I'm handing you what's been marked for identification purposes as States Exhibits 147 and 149. I'm going to leave them both up here if you're going to ask them to look at 147.
Yes.
What is 147?
This is the jacket that was recovered from the dumpster.
And it has gone to the crime lab, correct?
Correct.
For testing.
Yes.
The state will move to admit state 147.
Any objection?
No objection.
147 is admitted.
Published.
Yes.
And is there a hood on this jacket that I'm holding?
Yes.
149. First of all, do you recognize the outer packaging, which is in marked 149?
Yes.
And inside 149 is what? Just describe what it is.
Yep. 3 individual envelopes inside there.
And do you see a crime lab number associated with those?
Yes.
Okay. And could you just read that out for the record?
It's 2024-1005-107.
And those 3 items, go ahead and look inside. And do you recognize those 3 items inside the envelopes?
Those are 3 black gloves.
And the statement moved to admit states 149.
No objection.
149 submitted.
And may I publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
Just going to publish one of these out of 149. In front of you also is 145. So I'm going to ask you, after the collection of the gloves and the jacket, did you have the opportunity to also assist Special Agent Stewart in processing of the defendant in this case and collecting a sample of his DNA and photographing him?
Yes.
When did that occur?
This occurred on the 23rd.
Of what month?
The 23rd of February.
2024.
Yes.
And where did that occur?
At the Athens-Clarke County East Precinct.
And were you the person that actually physically swabbed the defendant to get a sample of his DNA?
Yes.
And was that done after obtaining first a search warrant?
Yes.
The sample of his DNA, tell the court how exactly you went about collecting it.
I collected buccal swabs using 2 sterile cotton swabs on the inside of his cheek.
Okay, and then did you label them?
Yes.
Did you seal them?
Yes.
And were they delivered to the crime lab sealed?
Yes.
The person that you swabbed that day, on the 23rd day of February, do you see him in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Would you please point to him and describe an article of clothing he's wearing?
He's wearing a blue and white checkered shirt.
May the record reflect the witnesses identified the defendant. States, can you give me that evidence number again? Is that 145?
145.
Okay. Are those the swabs that you collected?
Yes.
And this time, Your Honor, the state moved to admit states 145.
No objection.
145 submitted.
Moving on to other matters that you did in this case, I want to hand you what has been marked for identification purposes as States Exhibits 131 through 139. If you could look at those for me. Recognize those?
Yes.
What are they?
These are pictures that I took of a bag that was seized by ACCPD from Diego Ibarra.
What day did you obtain that bag from ACCPD?
The bag was obtained from ACCPD on the 26th of February, 2024.
When you obtained from ACCPD a bag that belonged to Diego Ibarra, did you search the bag?
Yes.
Okay. And did you look at the items inside the bag?
Yes.
And did you photograph the items inside the bag?
Yes.
And do State's Exhibits 131 through 139 depict the photographs that you took?
Yes.
And do they fairly and accurately depict the items of Diego's bag and items inside the bag as you saw them on February 26th of 2024?
Yes.
State would move to admit 131 through 139.
No objection.
They're admitted?
And may I publish?
Yes.
And in looking through the items that belonged to
Diego Ibarra, did you see any items that had any blood on it?
No.
States 131, what's that?
That's a picture of the bag.
States 134, what are those?
Those are 2 gloves that were found inside of the bag.
States 135.
The other side of those gloves that were found in the bag.
Now, are those cloth gloves or plastic gloves?
Those are cloth gloves. One of them is kind of a mix of leather type material and cloth.
And were there any blood on these items?
No.
Or was there any blood on those items?
No.
137,
That's a picture of the inside of the bag itself.
138,
That is the shoes that were inside the bag. I took those out and photographed them.
and these are just other items. Let's see, 136,
Those were found inside the bag as well.
139,
Those also found inside the bag.
133,
That was inside the bag.
132.
And that was in the bag as well.
Did you collect from the Athens Clark County Police Department a black Adidas style hat?
Yes.
Tell us under what circumstances you collected that and when.
That was collected at the same time that I collected the bag from the Athens Clark County Police Department. There was a search warrant that Sergeant Rabu had obtained for those items that had been taken off Diego Ibarra when he was taken into custody by ACCPD.
The black Adidas style hat, did you look at it?
When I collected it, I did not. It was already sealed in a bag from the Athens Clark County Police Department.
And that sealed bag, did you take that sealed bag to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation?
I did.
Okay. And I'm handing you a spin mark for identification purposes at States Exhibit 151. Do you recognize your handwriting on States 151?
Yes.
So what is States 151?
This is the evidence bag that I placed the Athens Clark County evidence bag inside of.
Okay, and what was inside the Athens Clark County bag?
A black Adidas hat.
And was that all delivered to the crime lab sealed?
Yes.
I'm going to move to admit States 151 and link it up with another witness, Your Honor.
No objection.
It's admitted.
And States 151, do you also see that same crime lab number on States 151?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Did you also obtain a cell phone, a blue Motorola cell phone, seized from Diego Ibarra from ACCPD?
I did at the same time that I picked up the bag and the hat.
I'm handing you what's been marked for identification purposes as States Exhibit 152.
Yes.
Do you recognize that item?
Yes.
What is it?
That is, this is the cell phone that was seized or that was collected from ACCPD. I then placed it inside of one of our evidence bags.
And was that the cell phone seized from Diego Ibarra on February 23rd of 2024?
Yes.
State would move to admit States 152.
No objection.
152 is admitted.
Of all the items, just globally, so I want to make sure that this was clear for the record. Of all the items that you collected from the scene of Laken Riley's murder, so that would be Daniela Stewart's numbers 1 through 8, you know what I'm talking about? Her evidence markers?
Yes.
Yes. All of those items that you collected, did you seal those items yourself?
Yes.
And did you deliver those to the crime lab sealed?
Yes.
May I have one moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
And States 141 while I'm up here, what is that?
This is a flash drive that I have signed, and when I signed it, it contained my body cam footage resolving collection of that jacket.
And is it a fair and accurate recording of your body cam footage?
It is.
State would move to admit 141.
Any objection to 141? No, sir. 141 is admitted.
And may I publish?
Yes.
So starting first with 144, is that the image that you were talking about that you had received?
Yes, ma'am.
And you said you got to work about 6 p.m. that day?
Yes, that's when my shift starts.
Okay. And you had that image, you said you started asking people, you know, millaging around. What else did you do in relation to trying to assist the officers with the crime that had just occurred?
So, given the university's location to Millage, I recalled an incident from 6 years ago where I pursued a subject from Building S, behind Building S, to, at the time, what was Argo Apartments at that 291, 295 address. And there's a perfect cut through that walks through those two. So I figured the ease of access for someone to easily cut over to Millage. I began checking dumpsters just because people tend to try and get rid of property in dumpsters that they don't want to be in possession of. I checked several dumpsters. We had also been called to, people were starting to call in about everything at this point, not really knowing what's going on, trying to be helpful. During that time, I found myself at the Rain Tree Apartments, wherever it was called. Started going through those dumpsters. There's one immediately behind the Italian restaurant that's there, that's still on the Rain Tree property. Looked in there, didn't see anything that really appeared to be evident that it was, pertinent to what was going on. I then made my way around. I noticed that the trash had been picked up recently. It's a rather large complex, and
Sorry, we had the lights off before you got here.
you're fine. And then, so the trash had been picked up either earlier that day or relatively recently, just due to the lack of trash that was in there. I made my way further into the complex, and I noticed there were 3 dumpsters, 2 of which were trash receptacles and one that was clearly marked for recycling. I checked the 2 trash ones. They have the sliding doors on the side. Looked in there, didn't notice anything. Again, nothing that really stuck out to me as pertinent. Finally went to the one that was strictly labeled for recycling. The sides of it were welded shut, but the top was open, so I climbed up onto it and looked down into it, and that's why I noticed the blue jacket.
Okay. And what, if anything, did you notice about the blue jacket? And is it the blue jacket that is depicted here in States 140?
It is.
All right, there's a pointer right next to you. Can you point out the jacket?
Oh, wow.
Oh, it should be, oh, nope, there's your pointer.
Perfect. So that is the jacket. The photo of the suspicious individual, they were wearing a darker colored jacket, appeared to have some shinier zippers or buttons on the front. Again, super grainy, but something to go on. The zipper, as well as it appeared as though there were leaves, and upon further examination, there was a little bit more.
Okay. Could you see anything else on the jacket at some point?
Not from this height. At this point, we didn't want to just be chasing down clothes in dumpsters, but given this proximity to the scene as well as the photo that was taken, I immediately notified my supervisor so that he could contact the University of Georgia Police Department since they were working the case. Detectives from UGA came out to look at it. They decided they would like to collect the evidence. I volunteered to climb into a dumpster, and upon picking up the jacket, I noticed that there were leaves on it, there were tears on the front as well, and what appeared to be some darker red or brown stains on the sleeves near the wrist.
Okay, and did you notice anything else on the jacket?
There was, I believe in my video I stated it's a button. The front has 2 pockets up here that fold down, and on the bottom has 2 pockets that fold out, that the buttons are used to close those pockets. Wrapped around one of the pocket buttons appeared to be dark hair.
So you jumped into the dumpster.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to show you or publish for you. Your Honor, can we toggle back over? States 141. Do you see the screen in front of you? Do you see that address, 2091 South Milledge Avenue?
Yes,
And that is located in Athens, Clarke County, Georgia.
it is.
Is that where you found this jacket?
It is.
Who's that we see in your body
That
cam
is
video?
Detective Norris from the University of Georgia Police Department. He's the one currently standing on the side of the dumpster. The gentleman on the right is, I'm not sure of his rank at this time, but it is, when I was there, Lieutenant Graham.
Okay. So are those ACC PD officers or UGA PD
University
officers?
of Georgia Police
Okay,
officers.
thank you.
The first 30 seconds is silent on all of our videos. It gives a chance to buffer and go backwards from time of activation.
Okay.
Just to
So we'll hear volume in a second.
Yes,
All right.
about 10 seconds.
Come on.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
There's hair on the buttons, ripped up sleeves.
Can you bundle it up with whatever is... Yeah, let me open this bag.
See a brunette?
Yes.
With women's long hair wrapped up in the buttons.
Let's stop it at 258 in the top, which of course is UTC. So if it's 258 UTC minus 5 hours, about what time of night was this?
9:58?
Pardon?
9:58?
9:58?
PM,
Okay.
yes.
PM.
You go turn to that.
So, I think you did that right. 2:23:24 2:58 UTC is 9:58 PM on the 22nd day of February 2024.
Yes.
Right, thank you. I heard you just ask, was she a brunette? Why did you ask that question?
Because the hair wrapped up in the buttons appeared to be darker, didn't appear to be full black, and it definitely wasn't blonde. So.
All right.
While I'm in here, stand by. Are we looking for a white coffee cup? It's not the same. It's part of some other trash. I know I still talk bad about me. I don't see anything else sticking out. You good with it? What? Been called dumb before. Y'all want to satisfy a report?
Satisfied.
How many dumpsters had you looked at that evening before you got to this one?
Before to this one, I believe there's one dumpster area located behind the Tall Boy Liquor Store, which is at the intersection of Millage and the Inner Loop exit ramp. So that would be 1 or 2 dumpsters there, the other one on that property, and then including the 2 more, so that puts us at 5, and this dumpster makes 6. Somewhere in that area.
All right. And we heard you say something about a coffee cup, a white coffee cup.
Correct.
What was that all about? What were you looking for?
In the, what are we calling it? The grainy photo?
Sure.
In the grainy photo, it appears that the subject's carrying a coffee cup.
Okay, well, hold on just a second. Maybe toggle back over. In states 144, do you see the cup you were talking about?
I do.
Okay, is that in the person's right or left hand?
Their left hand.
All right. Is that what you were looking for in the dumpster?
Yes, I just remembered seeing the photo and seeing a white coffee cup, but it didn't appear large enough when I picked it up.
And so you didn't find that, but you looked.
Correct.
And anything else in the dumpster that was suspicious to you at all?
No.
Did you notice, and the dumpster seemed kind of high, I mean, how high was it for you to get out? You stood in it, so how tall are you?
My license says 6 foot, it's like 5'11".
Okay.
But in boots, I'm 6 foot, and it's a hair taller than me, so probably 6'3", 6'4". The slit for the opening is, I believe I have to get on my tippy toes to look into it.
Okay.
So that's probably in the area of 6 feet.
All right. And when you hopped out of the dumpster, did you see a camera?
Yes.
Let me back up a little bit, and I want you to show us the camera that you saw when you got out. I'm going to go back to where you hop out, and I want you to tell me to stop when you see the camera.
Can we get the video back?
Just a minute, let's go back over.
Oh, sorry. So for the record now, I have states 141, and I'm just using the UTC time at this point at 2:59.
So
I'm stopping it now at 2:59.
yeah. So this apartment right here is Bravo 32 at Raintree Apartments. In that doorway, I believe it's on the left side, you can kind of see a dark spot right there.
Mm-hmm.
That dark spot in a clearer video would clearly be a security footage camera of that residence.
Okay. And did you let UGA PD or UGPD know that as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. May I have one moment with counsel, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'll pass the witness. Thank you.
Officer Davis?
Yes.
So we obviously see you get the jacket, take custody of the jacket, and before you put it into that paper bag, you were sort of talking to the other officers who were outside of the dumpster, right, describing a little bit?
Correct.
And one of the things we hear you say is that it's torn.
Correct.
And do you recall how many tears?
I do not. I did not want to manipulate the jacket any more than I needed to package it, but I also wanted to get as much of a description that I could at the time.
And then, and obviously you didn't examine it further after you packaged it up?
Correct.
Okay. That's all I have.
No, sir. How long have you worked there?
I've been there since 2012.
What are your duties and responsibilities there?
Title is an IT security analyst. I'm also an officer with the department. I serve as the lead digital forensics examiner for our investigations.
If you could adjust that microphone into your mouth, I just want to make sure that they can hear you over there, and Madam Court Reporter can hear you, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, security, say that one more time.
IT security analyst.
Okay.
And I'm an officer with the department, and I serve as the lead digital forensics examiner for the investigations.
What is a digital forensic examiner?
Specialized training and role to specifically examine any kind of digital evidence, computers, cell phones, any kind of electronic storage medium to support the investigations.
Tell the court a little bit about your training and education.
Education, I have a bachelor's degree in management information systems, a master's degree in information technology. I'm a post-certified police officer, so Georgia standards for peace officer certification. I have gone through specialized digital forensics training, starting with the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Glenn County, Brunswick, Georgia. Completed the 8-week curriculum there to go through courses and certifications in mobile device investigations, digital evidence acquisition, Windows computers analysis, and Macintosh forensics analysis for Mac computers. I've completed vendor-specific training for the tools and analysis software that we use in our unit, specifically with magnet forensics and their Axiom software for analysis. I'm a magnet-certified forensics examiner. What was Gray Shift for the Gray Key device, for the use of the Gray Key device to extract and analyze cell phones. Gray Shift is now owned by Magnet Forensics, that's why I say it used to be Gray Shift, as well as the Compelson Mobile Edit Forensics Pro software, which is a specialized software and analysis that's specialized in wearable devices, smartwatches, and stuff like that.
Were you asked by your department to do two things? Number one, extract data from a cell phone that belonged to Laken Riley, first of all.
I was.
And were you also asked to extract data from a Garmin watch that she was wearing at the time of her murder?
I was.
And did you do both of those things?
I did.
I'd like to start first with the extraction of Laken Riley's cell phone with Gray Key. Tell us, what is Gray Key and what did you do to her phone?
So Gray Key is a specialized device. It was specialized and created to access iPhone devices originally that we were not able to obtain access to. So it has specialized capabilities to be able to unlock iPhones. In this case, we were provided with the passcode for her phone, so I did not have to use the forced unlock feature of it, but it still has advanced features within it to obtain as much data as possible from the phone. So we used it, extracted her phone, and then entered all that into Magnet Axiom for our analysis and reports on her phone.
Okay. Let's start. I'm going to hand you a few documents. Let's do it all at once since I'm up there, but may I have one moment with counsel? So I'm handing you a few exhibits. One is 268. Let's do it one at a time.
Okay.
What is 268?
268 is it's a flash drive containing the Gray Key extraction data of Laken Riley's iPhone.
And did you learn that yourself?
I created this flash drive myself and handed it to you.
Thank you. And at this time, Your Honor, the state would move to admit states 268, but as with the previous phone extractions, we are not asking the fact finder to consider all of the data on this phone. There is a separate PowerPoint presentation that will be done by another witness, and that will be the data extraction for the phone, for the fact finder to consider. 268 is merely for the record.
Do you, any objection? No. It will be admitted for those purposes.
269, what is 269?
So this is a flash drive containing the extraction of the Garmin Forerunner watch used and created by the Mobile Edit Forensic Pro software, extracted directly from her watch. That report was copied onto this device by me and given to you.
And the state would move to admit states 269.
269 is admitted.
Did you create smaller reports from 269 of the Garmin data loss?
I did.
And how did you do those reports?
So from the extraction of the watch, we get basically the entire dump of data. So I was able to pull data points from the last run that was being tracked on her watch, and I entered all of that data into the SPSS analysis software, which is just a statistical analysis, produces charts and data analysis visuals.
And the Garmin, did it collect her heart rate?
It did.
Did it collect her speed?
It did.
And did it collect her location?
It did.
The location data, was that also sent to the FBI for their analysis as well?
It was.
I want to talk to you about states 270, 271, and 272. Do you recognize those documents?
I do. These are the charts that I created
From Laken Riley's Garmin data?
from the Garmin watch data.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would move to admit 270, 271, and 272.
Any objection? Thank you. 270, 271, 272 are admitted without
And
objection.
Would the court please toggle over so we can publish those documents? If you have a difficult time seeing that, let me know because I can come back up to you.
Okay.
Can
I
you
have a copy myself as well.
Oh, you have
Yeah,
a copy.
Yeah,
Do you have a copy of 270?
I do.
All right. Can you see states 270?
I can.
It's a little hard for me to read, and I'm afraid to touch this thing to make
Sure.
it zoom. Your Honor, can you see states 270? Okay, and defense counsel, can you see 270? Yes? Okay. So in states 270, can you tell us what we're looking at here?
So on the top graph, that is charting the heart rate logged by her watch. This is from the time frame of 9:08 and 30 seconds on February 22nd, 2024 until the time 9:15 and 30 seconds. And the bottom chart is graphing the location tracked speed of her movement during that time frame.
And why did you break it down into just this basically 7-minute time frame?
Simply for visual purposes. During the entire run that was logged on her watch, it tracked a data point every second that day. So there were over 33,300 data points set and recorded and extracted. So if we put that entire data set in a chart like this to fit on this one piece of paper, it would essentially be a flat line. So we basically just select a time frame that shows some pertinent data. That way we can visually see the peaks and valleys included in the chart in the data set.
So in looking at states 270, can you tell us, first of all, what was Laken's speed and her heart rate at 9:08 a.m.?
So at 9:08, so right at the start, okay.
Yes.
It's hard to read on mine as well. So heart rate at that time was 156, so that's beats per minute for the heart rate. The speed was at, and it tracks in meters per second to be clear. It's 2.65 is what's logged on the chart. For conversion's sake, that'll go over to 5.9 miles per hour, and for running purposes, that's a 10.2 minute mile.
What about the next data point for speed, which is 2.97? Is that faster than the previous one?
That is moving faster than the previous data point. So 2.97 meters per second. Again, comes down to up to 6.6 miles per hour, or just over a 9-minute mile.
And that particular speed, 2.97, is that the fastest that you see on her run that day?
The fastest was right at the beginning of the run.
Okay.
So that was around just after 9:03. You'll see that on the
States
next.
271?
Correct. Yeah.
So her fastest was 3.45?
3.45, 7.7 miles per hour, about a 7-minute 47 mile.
So going back to states 270, we were at, is that at 9:09 a.m. that it is at 2.97?
A little bit after that. I could give you the exact time if I had a minute to dig through the log, but it's shortly after 9:09.
At some point, we can continue to go along this track.
Okay.
But in States 270, did you also note at the time that Laken Riley called 911 from her phone?
Yes, and that's the vertical reference lines you see. Those are, yes, those are reference lines that we pulled over from the phone log data. So at the time the 911 call was placed, that was at, the actual call went out at 9:11:06. That's that third vertical line you see on the graph.
That's when the call went out, but did she attempt to make it sooner than that?
Yes.
So I want to talk to you about two things. At some point in States Exhibit 270, did Laken Riley come to a complete stop?
Yes.
What was the time that she came to a complete stop?
So the speed went to 0. I think that's notated on the third. Yeah, so on the third chart we have here, 272, is that what it'd be? It comes to a complete stop. Oh, nope, sorry. That was the heart rate.
How about States 271?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I thought I had it written down. Yep, wrong chart. So yeah, 9:10:44 was the time the speed went to 0.
What time did she attempt to start making that 911 call?
So the phone logged the phone call application, so the internal phones application started to recognize an attempt to place a call at 9:10:50. That's the second vertical line.
So for record purposes, 9:10:40 to 9:10:50 is how much time?
That'd be 6 seconds.
No.
Of 40 or 44?
Right, it's 9:10 and 44 seconds, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So that's the speed 0.
Okay.
And
Tell
then-
me the 911 SOS application. I want to ask you questions about that too, but tell me that time.
So the SOS, we initially saw that occur at 9:10 and 39 seconds. And
All right,
that's
so-
not referenced on this chart.
Okay, so how much time differentials between those two events, from the time that she comes to a complete stop and the time that she does the SOS function?
So the SOS function was actually initially applied prior to coming to a stop.
Okay, so tell us about that.
So
I'm just looking for the time between the two.
Right.
All right.
And I'm just trying to figure out exactly from what point you're talking.
All
So
right.
yeah, 9:10:39, we saw the SOS feature on the phone initially be activated. And by activation, the phone is just recognizing some way to initiate the SOS. There's multiple ways to do it. Long press or 2-button side press. So the side button is a volume button. You can long press that; it'll initiate. From the lock screen, you can hit the emergency call, and it'll bring up a dial pad. Then there's other features that have to be enabled that we did not see enabled on her phone. So when you see that SOS folder created at 9:10:39, we believe and we understand at that time is when we saw the SOS starting to become manipulated. Then what we see after the speed went to 0 with the phone call app intent to call, that's when the phone application is starting to recognize, hey, I need to start waking up to place a phone call. So from the 9:10:39 when SOS was activated to 9:10:50 when the phone application recognized, you're looking at 11 seconds from those 2 points. The 9:10:50 was 6 seconds after she stopped. So that was the phone call the phone being recognized that it needs to place a call occurred 6 seconds after she came to a complete stop. And then the phone call finally went out at 9:11:06, which would be, what's that? 44, 20, mental math. 44, 54, 22 seconds from the speed 0 to phone call out.
So it took the phone a minute, not even
Correct.
a minute, a few
Yeah,
seconds to recognize the SOS function and actually make the call.
Right.
Do you know how that works on an iPhone to enable an SOS function to make an emergency 911 call?
Yes.
Can you show us if I hand you my iPhone on the stand?
Mm-hmm.
Show us how that works, and you can show the cord.
All right,
How
so
would you do that?
So from the lock screen, we would swipe, you get your unlocked dial pad,
The cord.
and then from here, and then from here you would get the emergency button at the bottom. Hit that, and that will load a dial pad. From there, you would dial 911 and place the call. It's one way.
Okay, what's the other way?
That's the most familiar way for most people with their phone. So from an iPhone, you can select the side button and a volume button, hold, and it brings up the emergency option from that phone, from that display.
And so for the record, did you hold the two side buttons down simultaneously?
Correct.
For that screen to appear?
For this screen to appear.
Okay.
So that's one way. Then if you let go, you'll feel it vibrate. It vibrated in my hand when it brought this screen up. You would slide to place the call. Then on the newer iPhones, hers was a 15 Pro Max, so the latest at the time, if you continue to hold, it will then start a countdown. And it'll go 8-second countdown, and then it'll start vibrating, sounding an alarm, and then place the call automatically. But you have to continue to hold after this screen displays for it to do that.
So there are a few ways that
Correct.
you could do it.
Correct.
Do you know from examining, thank you, I'll take my phone back. Do you know from examining Laken Riley's phone which method of SOS 911 calling she used?
So from what we have seen and been able to determine, it appears that the dial pad was used.
And I want to talk to you about her heart rate continuation. So
Okay.
I'm going to show you back to State's Exhibit 271. Can you tell us the top graph? What does that depict?
So the top graph in red is the heart rate data, and that's from the time 9:03:42, which also coincided with the beginning of the tracked activity, being the run, and it runs to 9:33:59, and again, this is February 2nd, 2024.
When did her heart rate drop to 0?
So it went to 0 at 9:28 and 23 seconds.
And did it remain 0? And I want to show you 272. Tell us what we're looking at 272.
So 272 is the heart rate from that same beginning time, 9:03 and 42 seconds. And it's tracking all the way to 12:59 and 59 seconds, February 22nd, 24.
And at some point we see the 0 at 9:28, like you told us.
Mm-hmm.
And then we see what looks like her heart rate going back up at 12:37.
Yes.
What,
So
does that coincide with the CPR?
that coincides with CPR and is tracked based on the body cam footage from our officer arriving on scene.
So if you look at Officer Maxwell's body cam footage, which we've already looked at,
Correct.
at 12:37 p.m., he attempts CPR on Miss Riley, is that
That's
right?
correct.
And that caused, you were able to see that in the Garmin watch?
Yes.
All right. Between the 9:28 a.m. and when Officer Maxwell shows up at the scene, is there any movement in her heart rate?
No. The
It
heart
remains
rate-
0.
Correct.
All right. May I have one moment, Your Honor? I'll pass the witness.
Cross-examine.
Good afternoon. I really just have a couple questions to clarify something. We spoke on the phone a few weeks ago, right? Just for the court recorder, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Thanks. And I thought you told me then that you thought that the 911 call had been placed not through the keypad, but through the...
Correct. So in further analysis, finally following up with some forensic consultant solutions with Magnet Forensics, where we use our analysis software, we were able to find some more detailed information in it's called a P list, which is just a stored data file that's holding all of this data. And we found the setting in there that determined that the multi-press that we were originally thinking was, that feature was actually not enabled on her phone. So then a little bit deeper analysis into what was actually loading at the time, we could see that the dial pad for the emergency call was loaded on her phone at the time that the call was being placed.
Okay. And when did you find this out?
2 weeks ago.
So obviously after I spoke to you.
Mm-hmm.
And, but, okay, so caught me by surprise because I'm going by the report that I guess was prepared back when did you first do your analysis?
We initially started working this initially right after, so February.
Okay. Because in that report, you indicated that at 9, 10, and 39 seconds, the call was begun through the SOS process.
Well, the SOS application feature set was activated. The phone call did not occur until that 9, 10, and 50.
But in any event, your opinion at the time was that it was not made through the keypad.
Correct.
Okay. And then I also asked you, and maybe you have more information now, but I asked you on the phone that if you could tell who disconnected the call, and you said you weren't able to tell.
Not able to tell from the device.
Okay. And I saw in your report that's kind of this second by second timeline. You indicated that at 9:11 and 59 seconds, ACCPD 911 center showed the call ended. Is that right?
That's what I believe they said. Again, I was looking at phone data and just referencing what the ACC data center provided, but I did not scrutinize that log at all.
Okay, and then you indicate also that so 1 second later, at 9:12, 0 seconds, that Riley's phone showed the call ended.
Correct. The phone call, the device logged that the call ended.
So would that not indicate that the call didn't disconnect from Riley's phone's side of it?
If the 911 center said that it ended at 9:11:59, my opinion would be that the 911 center is what disconnected first, and then the phone recognized that the call disconnected and then logged it as a disconnected call a second later.
That's all, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Did you talk to the 911 call center to ask them if they hung up on Laken Riley?
I did not.
Okay. Wouldn't that be better evidence of what happened?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Donovan?
Any be excused?
Yes, sir. Maybe.
Daniela Stewart, DANIELLA STUART.
Where are you employed?
The Georgia Bureau of Investigation.
How long have you worked for the Georgia Bureau of Investigation?
Approximately 8 years.
What are your current duties and assignments there?
I'm currently assigned to my office as a crime scene specialist, but my title is special agent. I use them interchangeably.
What is a crime scene specialist, and which office do you work out of?
A crime scene specialist is a special agent that is assigned specifically to work crime scenes. So we specialize in just crime scenes. And I'm assigned to the Regional 11 Athens office.
Tell the court a little bit about your training and your education that qualifies you for your job.
So I have over 2,000 hours of combined law enforcement and crime scene training, and specifically I'm a graduate of the National Forensic Academy, which is a 10-week academy in Tennessee where we learn about latent print processing, blood stain, shooting reconstruction, advanced processing techniques for crime scene. I am also a state certified crime scene technician, so I've taken the 7 classes that the state requires for that certification. I also have additional training through my agency. We go through a 10-week, well, it's now 13 or 14-week academy where we have a week of crime scene training there as well. And as a crime scene specialist at the GBI, we continually train. I'm also the president of the Georgia IAI, which is an association in Georgia for additional training in forensics and crime scene processing. So we have yearly meetings that we attend for training and also conferences.
How many crime scenes have you had the opportunity to process over your career at the GBI?
So over my career at the GBI, I've probably processed close to, I want to say maybe between 80 to 100. Prior to working for the GBI, I worked for the Atlanta Police Department as a civilian crime scene technician. So there I responded to over 500 crime scene calls. I also worked for the DeKalb County Police Department in a civilian capacity in crime scene for a little while, where I also responded to major crimes.
Do you have some special training in photography as well?
Yes, I do.
Can you tell the court about that?
So in the National Forensic Academy, we have a week of photography there as well. And in
the GBI Special Agent Academy, we also do photography in crime scene week as well. And then for the GBI, we train additionally in photography. So this year alone, we've had photography training.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm handing you a few items of evidence so I don't have to keep coming back up here at one time. The first one is states 142, and I apologize because we have pre-marked a lot of evidence, so I don't like to go out of order, but this one will be out of order. Do you recognize states 142?
I do.
And there will be 18 through 141, just so that everybody knows. What is states 142?
This is a copy of my CV.
And that means your qualifications that you went over with us?
Correct.
State would move to admit states 142.
No objection.
142 is admitted.
The next fact I am going to hand you is going to be a series of photographs and a crime scene sketch. The photographs are marked for the record as states exhibits 18 through 84. And the crime scene sketch is states exhibit 85. So first, starting with the photographs, I'm going to hand you states exhibits 18 through 84. I ask that you take a look at those and I ask you a series of questions. Do you recognize 18 through 84?
I do.
What are they?
They are crime scene photographs that I took.
And are they the crime scene photographs that you took on the 22nd day of February, 2024?
Yes.
And do they fairly and accurately depict the scene as you saw it on that day?
Yes, they do.
State would move to admit states 18 through 84.
No objection.
They're admitted.
States exhibit 85, is that still in front of you?
Yes.
Can you tell us what that is?
This is one of my crime scene sketches.
And is that a fair and accurate copy of your crime scene sketch? And does that sketch adequately and accurately represent the scene as you saw it on that day?
Correct.
State would move to admit states exhibit 85.
No objection.
85 submitted.
And before we move on to, I want to ask you a little bit, I know it's in your CV, but I would like you to tell the court a little bit about your training in latent print processing. What is latent print? What is the processing of it? And how are you trained in that regard?
So as far as latent print processing, again, at the National Forensic Academy, we have a week of latent print processing there as well, which includes latent print photography. I also teach classes, crime scene classes for the University of Tennessee, and I go back and I actually teach at the Forensic Academy, so I've taught the latent print week there as well. And then with the GBI, we have additional training in latent print processing.
How many items of evidence have you had the opportunity to process for the presence of latent prints over your career?
Oh gosh, a lot. When I worked in the Atlanta field office, we processed a lot of vehicles, a lot of cartridge cases. Like I said, I responded to over 500 crime scene calls there, so maybe about half of those probably involved latent print processing.
And Your Honor, at this time, the state would tender Special Agent Stewart as an expert in the fields of crime scene photography, latent print processing, and crime scene processing.
No objection.
Should be allowed to testify as an expert in those areas.
May I approach to retrieve the photographs?
Yes.
Could you start first by telling the court what date and time did you get a call to process a scene on the University of Georgia's campus?
So it was February 22nd, and I responded to the crime scene at approximately 2 p.m., so I would have gotten the call maybe an hour prior to that.
Tell the court what the crime scene was like when you got there.
When I got there, one of the things that I noticed was it was very windy out. There was a lot of leaf coverage in the area. It was a wooded area.
What was the temperature like?
It was approximately 67 degrees.
Was this an outdoor scene?
It was an outdoor scene.
Can you tell the court what are the challenges particular to outdoor scenes?
So with an outdoor scene, obviously you're dealing with weather conditions, basically Mother Nature could be directly impacting you. Whereas when you have an indoor scene, even if it's raining outside, it's not really going to impact how you work.
And did you find any challenges with this particular scene due to the foliage?
Yeah, so like I stated previously, the leaf coverage was kind of thick in the area that was off of the trail, and it was also very windy.
And so how did that impact you and your ability to process the scene?
Well, when it's windy, obviously things are not going to stay where they normally are or where they were previously. So you kind of have to take that into account when you're looking for evidence.
Did you process the scene by yourself or with others?
With other people.
And tell us a little bit about that process in this particular case.
So how our agency works is we are a request-only agency, which means that an agency has to request us for assistance. That may mean us taking over the entire case. That may mean us just working the crime scene. That may mean us just doing a few investigative acts for them. So in this case, the University of Georgia Police Department requested for me to help process the crime scene.
Who did you work with specifically with the University of Georgia Police Department in processing the scene?
That would be now Lieutenant Saunders.
And how did y'all go about processing the scene? Was it together? Was it separate? Tell us about that process here.
Yeah, so what we decided was because they were going to be the primary agency on the case, I took photographs for them. That was what they requested. And then I assisted with collecting the evidence, but Detective Saunders took possession of all of the evidence.
And when you said you assisted in collecting it, were you literally standing side by side as y'all were collecting it together?
Yes.
I want to start with an overall of the crime scene and your crime scene sketch, which would technically be State's Exhibit 85. And for ease, Your Honor, we have a blown-up version of State's Exhibit 85, which I think would be easier for the witness to testify to and would not have to leave the stand for that. So may I approach the witness?
Yes.
I'm handing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 143. Do you recognize that?
I do.
What is it?
It is a blown-up copy of my crime scene sketch.
So is State's 143 just a blow-up copy of State's 85?
Correct.
And would using State's 143 aid you in your testimony today before this judge to explain the crime scene?
Yes, it would.
State would move to admit 143 for demonstrative purposes only.
Submitted for that purpose.
And may I publish it using the easel here if it will stay?
Yes.
Let's see. No? All right. Can you turn it? And then I'll put it right first. Get to it later. Yeah, so you can flip it to that board. The easel doesn't have feet, so we are going to try to clip it. We need a bigger clip. Thank you. Thank you. One bigger one? So we can clip it on both sides. Thank you. So having clipped State's Exhibit 143 to the easel, I want to make sure that defense counsel can see and can the court see. Thank you. I want to start talking to you about your photos. How many evidence markers did you have on this scene, and what is the significance of the evidence markers?
I used 8 evidence markers.
And did you label the items of evidence by number?
Yes.
And just before we get started, tell the court, what is evidence item number 1 that you collected or you assigned number 1?
The Airpod.
Okay. And evidence item 2?
Evidence item 2 was a blood-stained rock.
Evidence item 3?
A blood-stained rock.
Evidence item 4?
Was a section of a tree.
Evidence item 5?
The jacket.
Evidence item 6?
The sports bra.
Evidence item 7?
A suspected blood stain.
Evidence item 8?
The cell phone.
And the cell phone belonging to who?
Laken Riley.
Did you assign these a number by any significance, or just the number in which you collected them, or
just the number in which I collected them? Sometimes I do it by what I first see. It just depends.
I'd like to start first with State's Exhibit and 18. Tell the court, what are we looking at here?
So this is an overall photograph of the trail.
And in this picture, State's Exhibit 18, in what direction would be Laken Riley's body?
It would be towards the right side.
Okay, so I'm gonna, for the record, point my finger on the right side where my finger is?
Yes.
That would be in that direction?
Yes.
When you got there, did you observe, first of all, was Laken's body still there?
Yes, it was.
And did you observe any signs of medical intervention?
Yes.
What did you observe?
So with the AED pads were actually still on her body, and the AED was actually still audible.
What is an AED?
It is a device that first responders use to try to revive individuals.
State's Exhibit 22, what are we looking at there?
This is an overall showing the area closer to her body, which was near a tree that had already fallen down.
The tree that her body was near that had already fallen down, can you see that? Can you point to it for the record?
Yes.
The screens don't work like that. I think you have to point behind you.
Okay. Thank you.
She has a pointer.
Right here.
It's in the middle of photograph 22.
Yes.
Page 22. Okay. State's Exhibit 49. What does this depict?
So this is an overall, once I put out my evidence markers, and the fallen tree would be on this side.
To the left side of State's 49 for the record.
Correct.
All right. State's Exhibit 33, what are we looking at here?
This is an overall of the top half of her body.
Did you observe injuries to Laken Riley's body?
Yes.
State's Exhibit 35. Tell the court, first of all, where overall did you observe injuries?
So there were injuries to the left side of her head, and then there were also these linear marks on her torso.
And point to those for us. Is that, okay, thank you. Middle of State's 35. State's 38, what part of Laken Riley's body are we looking at here?
So this would be the lower, like just below her left hip. I had to kind of pull down her underwear. We always try to examine the decedent to see if there are any individual injuries under the clothing that we're missing.
And is that your glove then that we see in the photo?
Yes, it is.
All right, what injuries did you see when you pulled down her underwear?
There was another linear mark that looks kind of similar to the ones that were on her torso, but a little bit wider.
Okay, can you point that out for the court? Where is her underwear line in this photo then?
So her underwear is down here where my glove is, because I'm having to pull it down to photograph that injury.
And in this injury that you photographed in States 38, is that in her pubic area?
Yes.
And you actually can see pubic hair in that area?
Correct.
Can you show that to the court, please? All right, thank you. Circle it below the wound for the record in the bottom part of States 38.
Yes.
States 39.
This is a photograph of the lower half. So I was trying to photograph the dirt stains that were on her leggings.
States 40.
Those are her shoes.
States 27.
This is a close-up of her face.
States 32.
This is a close-up of the injuries to the left side of her head.
Please point to the injury, one of the injuries to the left side of her head that you captured in this photo.
So on scene, really I can only observe two. I know that there were more, but I can only see two. So this one and then this larger one.
Did you make any observations about her hair?
Yeah, so her hair was very tangled, which made it difficult for me to locate the additional injuries.
And tangled with what?
So there were leaves, blood, dirt tangled in her hair.
And when you say tangled, do you mean attached? Do you mean, I don't mean to be picky, but what do you mean by tangled?
Yeah, so typically with the decedents, we try to do an examination for additional injuries, which would mean somewhat kind of looking through the hair. And in this case, it was extremely difficult for me to do that because her hair was so matted and clotted with blood.
For some reason we lost, all right, there it goes, okay. State's exhibit, and I want to ask you before we leave off the underwear, you said you did pull down the underwear.
Correct.
But this photo, State's exhibit 35, does that depict the way you found her underwear when you got there?
Yes.
Before you actually examined her for other injuries?
Correct.
Okay. And how would you describe her underwear in this photo and what you saw on scene?
So on scene, her leggings were down below her belly button, and the underwear was somewhat protruding out of the right front area.
Did you flip her?
Yes, we did.
State's exhibit 41, what did you observe when you flipped her?
When I flipped her over, I noticed that her leggings were exposing the upper area of her buttocks.
And can you show us where that's depicted in States 41?
Yes. In this area.
In the middle of the photograph?
Correct.
States 42, what does that depict?
So there's a little bit of a glare, but I was just trying to show that she had like some leaves on her back, which is, I guess, to be expected because she was laying in that area. And then also that her hair was matted.
I was trying to find a way to eliminate the glare because it might become a problem later. But I'm not sure how we would do that without turning out the lights. So,
Oh, if you hold it.
let's see.
We can dim some of the lights if that's something that's important.
Would we be able to dim a little bit just so the glare disappears?
They don't dim a little bit. It's a matter of turning off. See what you can do to take those down, and we'll still have these up here.
That's too cumbersome. Much better. Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. With the glare be gone, States 42, can you show us what part of Laken's body are we looking at here, and what are you photographing?
So we're looking at the back, but also we're looking at her head where her hair is has leaves and sticks and dirt and blood in it.
Where's her neck in that photograph? Okay. And was she wearing a necklace?
Yeah, she was.
Okay. And can you point the necklace out on States 42 at the top of the picture? Okay. Thank you. States 43.
This is a photograph of her left hand.
Was she wearing a watch?
She was.
And do you see that watch in this photograph?
Yes.
And can you please point to it? Okay. Thank you. States 44.
This is a photograph of her left hand also, just her fingernails.
States 45.
Photograph of her right hand.
States 46.
Another photograph of the right hand showing her fingernails.
Did you take measurements on scene?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to move away from the photographs of her body. But before I do that, I wanted to ask you about her shoes and any observations you may have made about her shoes. What type of shoes was she wearing?
She had Hoka brand running sneakers.
And did you observe those and look at those on scene?
Yes.
And what observations, if any, did you make about those shoes? And I'm showing you now States 40 for the record.
When I first looked at them, I noticed that they had reddish stains on them, and then they were also dirty, and then in the grooves, dirt was, I guess, caked, for lack of a better term, in those grooves.
And when you say reddish brown stains, what do you mean by that?
The suspected blood stains.
Did you take measurements at the scene?
Yes.
I'm gonna ask you, first starting with what you marked on your evidence marker as your evidence marker 1, and while we're talking about evidence marker 1, I'm gonna approach you with some of the evidence. Do you have gloves?
Yes, I do.
Would you glove up, please?
Yes.
And may I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Special Agent Stewart, we're going to start with marker 1. You already told us it was an Airpod.
Yes.
Was it on the trail or off the trail?
It was off the trail.
Approximately how far off the running trail was your marker 1?
That was a little difficult to determine because it was hard to see where the trail actually ended and where the road started and the, I guess like the leaves, because the leaves were so thick in that area, but it wasn't far.
So when we see leaves in this photograph states 55, could you also then point for the court where is the marker 1 on this chart?
Yes.
At the bottom of 143. And may I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Handing you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 86. Do you recognize State's 86?
Yes.
What is it?
It is the Airpod.
And if you keep your voice up so Madam Reporter can hear you, and you can take it back. Okay. And is the Airpod in the same or substantially same condition as it was when you collected it on the 22nd day of February 2024?
Yes.
State would move to admit State's Exhibit 86. Request permission to publish.
No objection.
86 is admitted.
May I publish?
Yes.
Okay. The distance, I'd like to ask you, from this trail, from where you marked 1, from your marker 1 to markers 2, 3, and 4, what is that distance?
64 feet, 11 inches.
And you measured that day?
Yes.
The distance from where you marked 2, 3, and 4 to where Laken Riley's body was found, what is that distance?
13 feet.
And the distance from marker 8, and what is marker 8 again?
The phone.
The distance from Laken Riley's body over here at 5 and 6 to the phone is what?
I believe it's 54.7 or 57.4.
Over 50 feet.
Yeah, it's over 50 feet.
Thank you. I want to go on to your evidence markers 2 and 3. What were those?
This was evidence markers 2 and 3 represent rocks that were bloodstained, and then evidence marker 4 represents the tree that had bloodstains.
All right, before we zoom in on 2, 3, and 4, what, if anything, did you notice about this area in your crime scene sketch that you labeled 2, 3, and 4?
So in this area near evidence markers 2, 3, and 4, there was also an area where I could actually see the ground, where the leaves were significantly disturbed to the point where I could physically see the ground.
And why is that significant to you?
Because the leaf coverage was pretty thick throughout the entire crime scene, and there were no other areas where I could actually see the ground.
So what conclusions did you draw based upon that?
Based on that, and then also like her hair being very matted, some type of significant disturbance happened in that area.
Did you observe blood in that area?
I did.
And where did you observe the blood in that area?
The blood was near evidence markers 2, 3, and 4, and there was no other blood in the crime scene other than obviously where her body was resting.
State's Exhibit 62, what is that?
That is a close-up photograph of the rock from evidence marker 2.
I'm just asking why you think it's going dark.
Out, yes. Does it sleep? Is that the sleep mode?
No, it should be. We don't have that problem. It must be a connection issue, but I'm not sure. If it gets worse, we can, a lot of times it's, we'll just keep watching and see. I don't know.
That is a rock. Is this one 2 or 3?
That one is evidence marker 2, and there were some hairs on that rock.
What type of hair?
It looked like it was brown, yeah, brown.
63
This is the rock from evidence marker 3.
and 64.
Another view of that rock, and you can see that there's hair on it.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Handing you 2 bags. One is State's Exhibit 87. The other one is State's Exhibit 88. I'm going to ask that you look inside both of those bags, and then I'm going to ask you some questions.
Do I pull the items out?
Yeah, if you can see it to yourself, yes. Just set them on top of your lap if you could. And just do them at the same time if you could do the other one. And then I'll ask you about both at the same time. So have you had an opportunity to look at the items inside State's Exhibit 87 and 88?
Yes.
Yes.
That one goes with that.
Yes. Do you recognize those items?
I do.
And what are 87 and 88?
They're the rocks that were collected from the crime scene.
And are they both in the same or substantially same condition as they were on the day that you collected them, February 22nd of 2024?
Yes.
State would move to admit States 87 and 88, request permission to publish.
87, 88.
Let's do them one at a time. I am holding
This one is
yes, that's the first one. Yep. So this is State's Exhibit 87 I'm about to publish to the court. Which number is this in your crime scene sketch?
evidence marker 2.
That's marker 2. '88. What evidence marker is this one?
Evidence marker 3.
And approximately what was the distance between 2 and 3?
I feel like it was less than a foot. They were very close together, which is why they got measured together.
How long did you spend at this crime scene that day?
I started at 2 and I was finished at around 8:45 p.m. So a little over 6 hours.
How much walking around this area, not only the crime scene where her body was found, but other areas around there, did you do that day?
When we got done with labeling when I got done with labeling 1 through 7, we were still looking for her phone, which is evidence marker 8. So we were still canvassing the area for that and additional items. I also looked for additional blood stains, so we went beyond just where her body was. I also had other agents search the area as well.
In and around the area of her body and in anywhere out in that forest where you walked that day, did you observe any other rocks that were similar to the ones that you collected at 2 or 3?
No.
Moving on to item 4, and if you need to change gloves, you can. State's Exhibit 66, what does that depict?
That is a photograph of the bloodstone tree.
And State's Exhibit 67, what does that depict?
The hairs that were attached to the tree.
It's difficult to see from my perspective, but can you point out the hairs that you saw in State 67? Okay, in the middle of the photograph. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Handing you now what's been marked for identification purposes as State Exhibit 89. Ask that you look at that, please. Do you recognize State Exhibit 89?
I do.
What is it?
It is a section of that tree.
And is it in the same or substantially same condition as it was the day you collected it on February 22nd?
Yes.
So you move to admit State Exhibit 89.
No objection.
Submitted?
And may I publish?
Yes.
Did you guys literally cut the tree?
Yes.
And why did you do that?
Because we wanted to make sure that we had the best evidence possible, and we felt that swabs were not going to be enough.
Evidence marker 5. Which is State 69 and is depicted in the photograph. What is that?
That's her jacket.
And State's Exhibit 70, what does that depict?
Her sports bra.
And had those items been cut prior to your arrival?
Yes.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Handing you now what has been marked for identification purposes of State's Exhibit 90 and 91. I'll ask you to do the same thing, take a look at those items, and I'll ask you some questions. Can you start with 90? What is State's 90?
This is her jacket, and actually there was also her shirt, but her clothing was so tangled that I didn't even realize the shirt was in there on scene.
And when you say tangled, what do you mean by that?
Well, the AED pads, it had been cut off by law enforcement. The AED pads were tangled in the clothing, and to avoid disturbing any trace evidence, we didn't open it completely.
All right, and are those items in the same or substantially same condition as they were when you collected them?
Yes.
They would move to admit State's 89.
No objection.
89 was the three.
I apologize, 90. And may I publish 90 before moving on?
Yes.
There's part of her sports bra on there too. Yeah.
Let's do them one at a time. And 90, there are 3 items inside State's 90, the bag that's marked State's 90. Item number 1 I have in my hand inside of State's 90 is in my right hand. What is this item?
That is the jacket.
Item 2 in my left hand inside of State's 90, what is that?
The shirt.
Does this jacket have a zipper on it?
Yes, it does.
Item number 3 inside of State's 90, what is this?
A section of the sports bra.
Moving on to State's 91. Sorry, 90. Let me fix that. Or do you want to pick up here? Pick that one. Is 91 in the same or substantially same condition as it was the day you collected it?
Yes.
Say we move to amend states 91, request permission to publish.
No objection.
And what is 91?
A section of the sports bra.
So the other section of the sports.
Correct.
Thank you. That would bring us to your item number 7. Could you tell us about item 7?
So as I mentioned before, I was trying to look for additional evidence, and as I was walking the area looking for additional blood stains, I came across a dark colored stain that I suspected could be blood, so I marked it, I tested it, it ended up not testing for the presence of blood.
And that's item 73 or State's Exhibit 73?
Yes.
Show you States 50. What are we looking at there?
So this is after I put out my evidence markers, and I'm just showing generally where the evidence markers are, and then this is the area of disturbed leaves.
Show the area of disturbed leaves.
Where I could actually see the ground.
So would it be in States 50 between the tree that you cut and Laken Riley's body in that photograph?
Correct.
States Exhibit 54. Let me move some of these on. What does that depict? And wait a second, I think it'll clear on its own. There we go.
So in this photograph, I'm trying to show evidence marker number 1, which is the Airpod, and then there was also a path of disturbed leaves, not as disturbed as the area near 2, 3, and 4, that I used pin flags to kind of show the track of the disturbed leaves.
And that path of disturbed leaves, did it go from the trail to where?
It went from the trail to evidence markers 2, 3, and 4.
And that path would be how long in length?
It would have been a little less than 6411.
But would it be over 50 feet?
Yes.
When you say you saw disturbed leaves and you marked them with those orange flags, what did you physically see?
So when we were looking in the area, we were trying to look for additional evidence or just evidence in general. There, like I said, the leaf coverage was thick, but you could see almost like a slight depression in that area that led from the trail to the area of evidence markers 2, 3, and 4. And it was a little challenging to photograph because of the shadows of the trees, so I used the pin flags to show the path.
And what are we looking at here in States 53?
So this is a photograph from evidence markers 2, 3, and 4 back out, showing the viewpoint from the opposite direction, going from 2, 3, and 4 back to the trail, and then the pin flags are there.
Can you point to the pin flags so we can see them?
Yes.
Okay. Up in the middle of the photograph. And when you walked that trail and you photographed and you looked at, did you look at the disturbed leaf path?
Yes.
Did you see any blood?
No, I did not.
States 50. I already showed you that one, I'm sorry. Hold on a second. I want to talk to you about your marker 8. What was marker 8?
The phone.
At what time or how long approximately did it take y'all to find the phone?
We found the phone maybe about an hour before we finished, so maybe like 5 hours.
By the time you found the phone, was it daylight still or dark?
It was still dark. Oh, well, sorry. It was dark.
So States Exhibit 80, what are we looking at there?
I can't see the evidence marker.
I'm sorry, hold on. I will try to move it and see if it resumes. There we go.
So this is a photograph of evidence marker 8, and then in the background, those are the other evidence markers.
Okay. And where, I know we see evidence marker 8, but can you see the actual cell phone in this photograph?
No.
Okay. But it was there where evidence marker 8 was?
Yes.
Okay. Did you take a close-up of this?
I did.
States 81, what does that depict?
The cell phone.
Can you please point to the cell phone in States 81? Okay, in the middle of the screen?
Yes.
Did you collect the cell phone?
Yes, we did.
Did you look at the cell phone?
Yes.
What, if anything, did you observe about the cell phone?
We noticed that there was an area of ridge detail on the phone.
When you say ridge detail, what do you mean by that?
Fingerprint ridge detail.
Were you able to see that without processing the phone at all?
Yes, a little bit, but I had to use oblique lighting, so that's where you take your flashlight and you kind of side light it to be able to view the latent prints better.
States 82, what does that depict?
That's a photograph of the phone and me using the flashlight to try to highlight it.
I'm going to wait for this thing to stop moving. Okay, hold on a second. Maybe it doesn't like the photos on top of each other. Okay. Where on the phone was this image that you saw, or this item that you saw? See, I'm not even touching it now, and it's just moving.
It was at the bottom, close to the charging port area.
And do you see it depicted in States 82?
Yes.
Please point to it with your pointer. Were you able to determine, was there any reddish brown stains on the phone?
Yes.
Okay, what did you see?
It looked like there were reddish stains suspected to be blood.
Okay. Where on the phone?
Specifically the print.
States Exhibit 83, this may be really tough. I think I'm going to have to come to you closer for it. So before I do that, did you end up taking a better photograph or more photographs of the latent print that you saw on the phone?
Yes.
States Exhibit 84, what is that?
That is a macro photo of the latent print, or in this case it would be a patent print because we could kind of see it, so, of the ridge detail.
Of the ridge detail.
Correct.
And when you say a macro photo, what do you mean by that?
So with photography, we have different lenses, and the macro lens specifically allows us to take close-up photographs of small items that are difficult to see. So it almost magnifies.
When did you take this photo?
On the scene after we collected the phone, immediately.
Was it before or after the phone was processed for prints?
This photograph, I believe this one is before. Yes, this one is before Detective Saunders used powder.
Okay, and did you see Detective Saunders process the phone?
I did.
And was that done in your presence?
Yes.
And then did he lift a latent lift card from that phone?
He did.
But this was your photograph prior to that?
Correct.
Now, for States 83, I am going to have to come closer to you because I am assuring that it's not going to show. May I approach?
Yes.
States 83, could you tell us what we're looking at? And then I'm just going to have to show counsel in the court.
This is a photograph of I was trying to show that the print was located in the area where you would swipe to unlock. And so the phone was actually still receiving notifications. And so it actually says swipe to unlock behind the print.
Where do you see the swipe to unlock on this photo? At the very bottom?
Yes.
I'm going to show defense counsel first, and then with the court's permission, may I show the court?
Yes.
And I will approach the court. Very difficult to see, but where my thumb is. So moving to the phone and your exhibit marker 8. You can switch gloves if you need to. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
what has been marked as State's Exhibit 92. Do you want me to take your old ones?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm going to ask that you look inside State's 92. Do you recognize what's inside State's 92?
Yes.
And what is it?
This is the cell phone that was at evidence marker 8.
And is it in the same or substantially same condition as it was when you collected it?
Yes.
Statement moved to admit State's 92.
No objection.
92 is admitted.
May I publish?
Yes.
So while I'm publishing the phone, can you put, using your finger where you saw the latent, our patent ridge detail that we see in States 84?
It would have been right here.
And do you have an iPhone?
Yes, I do.
Right here where you put your finger, is that where you would hang up a call?
Yes.
Okay. On an iPhone?
Yes.
Just have a few more photos. 74. What is State 74?
So this is, I was trying to show how we got to the phone because the phone was not close to where her body was. So there's my evidence marker 1, marking the Airpod, and then I tried to use this tree stump as a marker to show the path of getting to the phone.
72.
So that's, we talked earlier about the suspected stain.
Mhm.
So in this photograph, I'm just trying to show some spatial relationship between 2, 3, and 4 in that stain.
And finally 25.
This is the area where first responders initially said her body was, and they moved her out. And I was just trying to show that even with first responders in this area, and there were several of them moving her, that area is still not nearly as disturbed as the area near evidence marker 2, 3, and 4.
On the scene that day, were Laken Riley's hands bagged?
Yes, they were.
And when we say bagged, can you describe what actually happened?
What we do is we put handbags over the hands to prevent the loss of any potential trace evidence or DNA.
And was that done in your presence by Lieutenant Saunders?
Yes.
Did you, what time did you leave that day, you said?
8:45.